Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here and to speak to you. Today, I'd like to share some thoughts about the factors that influence career paths and trajectories of life in general. Now, I'm an evolutionary biologist by training, and so I'll start by describing a thought experiment that was developed to guide our intuition about the inherent repeatability and predictability of evolutionary change. And I'll then explain how the same thought experiment can be repurposed to think about the factors that shape and direct our career paths. So I'll take a metaphor for the evolution of life, and I'll refashion it as a metaphor for the evolution of individual lives. Now, in my own field of evolutionary biology, there are certain fundamental questions that transcend all scales of analysis and levels of biological organization. For example, in examining any given evolutionary outcome, one of the most fundamental questions we can ask concerns the relative roles of chance and necessity. So, for example, is the evolutionary outcome that we observe simply one of many idiosyncratic possibilities produced through quirky, unpredictable pathways of contingent history? Or alternatively, is the particular outcome that we observe a repeatable, predictable consequence of invariant laws? This question about the relative roles of contingency and determinism was the subject of a great book called Wonderful Life, written by the late paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould. So in this book, Gould focused on the so-called Cambrian explosion. This was a pivotal era in life's history about 600 million years ago, when there was a rapid diversification of animal body plans and anatomical design principles. Of the varied animal forms that evolved during this pivotal period in life's history, only a small subset of these designs are represented among contemporary animals. So Gould's thesis was that among the many body plans and anatomical designs that evolved during the Cambrian explosion, those forms that have modern descendants are those that, largely by chance, happen to survive each of the successive mass extinction events during the past 600 million years. So Gould argued that if we were to rewind the tape of life, if we were to rewind the tape back to the Cambrian explosion, and then let the tape play forward again, thereby producing an experimental replicate of the evolutionary process, then representatives of different lineages would persist to the present day. So the point is that in each replay of the tape, animal life would end up having a somewhat different cast and appearance, simply due to the influence of historical contingency. So this is because chance events at the outset can unleash cascades of consequences that set the trajectory of evolution down one particular pathway rather than any number of other possible pathways. So this rewind the tape metaphor was originally developed to guide our intuition about the roles of contingency and determinism in the evolution of life, but I think the same thought experiment is also instructive for thinking about the factors that shape and direct the paths we travel in pursuing a career or in pursuing a calling. After all, the actual path that we travel is simply one among myriad possibilities that are open to us at any given time. We may be masters of our own destiny, but it's also true that quirky chance events can produce a chain of consequences that nudge us down one particular path rather than any number of other possible paths. So if you graduates think about how you ended up here, earning an advanced degree in your chosen field of study, it might seem inevitable in retrospect, given your particular interests, proclivities, and talents. But if you trace your personal journey back to your undergraduate days, back to your high school days, or even your elementary school days, you could probably identify numerous chance events that shaped and directed the path that led you to where you are now. For example, think about what first sparked your interest in the general subject that you ended up focusing on in graduate school. During college, you may have discovered your current passion because you happened to enroll in a certain class that was taught by a particular professor. That one particular class or that one particular professor may be partly responsible for directing you down the particular path that has led you to where you are now. If you had gone to college somewhere else, then you would have taken different classes. You would have been exposed to different professors. Depending on where you went to college, you might be exposed to different cultures, different parts of the country, different parts of the world. You would have been exposed to different books and different ideas. And most importantly, you would have ended up with a different set of friends, a different peer group. And your path through life would likely have been quite different. Now, you might say, my choice of friends is not something that's left to chance. That's something that's solely up to me. And that's certainly true. But it's also true that at any point in your life, the pool of prospective friends that you have to choose from is often pretty random. So, for example, think back to college days. In college, I think it's often the case that the first new friends you make are people that you meet in the freshman dorm. So what determines the mix of people that are thrown together in this common living arrangement? Well, I imagine that there's an administrator somewhere who screens the files of incoming freshmen and decides who lives in which dorm, and within a given dorm, who lives on the first floor, who lives on the second floor, who gets paired together as roommates. The point is that the randomness of your particular dorm assignment helps determine the pool of prospective friends that you have to choose from at the outset of your college experience. And that in turn can influence the set of friends that you keep with you through the rest of college and potentially the rest of your life. It'd be interesting to know to what extent your random dorm assignment in your freshman year of college ends up influencing the invitation list for your wedding many years later. So regardless of which college you attended and which dorm you lived in, you'd still likely gravitate to the same types of people with the same types of shared interests. But you'd become friends with different individual people, and that can make all the difference. So returning to our metaphor, if you were to rewind the tape of your own life and let it play forward again, in each replay of the tape, you would end up meeting different sets of people. You'd be exposed to different ideas and different ways of thinking. Each replay of the tape would yield a different outcome. Slight alterations in any step along the way can alter your trajectory through life so that it follows one particular path rather than any number of other possible paths. Now, when you view your own career path in retrospect, the actual outcome, the place where you are now, may have been predictable in broad outline, but historical contingencies probably had a larger influence than you realize. If you were to rewind the tape of your own life and let it play forward again, maybe you would end up in roughly the same place. For example, in each replay of the tape, maybe you'd end up becoming a novelist in each and every time. Maybe there's something about who you are that makes that an essentially preordained outcome. However, in each replay of the tape, you'd follow a different path to becoming a novelist, and that would determine what kind of novelist you would become. So in closing, I also just want to make the point that acknowledging the influence of historical contingency in shaping and directing our path through life is not fatalistic. It's quite the opposite, in fact, because this view emphasizes the controlling influence of immediate events over destiny or any other kind of preordained outcome. So anyway, I think that these are fun and interesting things to think about, regardless of what stage of life you're at. And for those of you who are earning your degrees today, first of all, congratulations. And whichever path you choose to travel from this point onward, I wish you all the best. Thanks.